Welcome to Life After, a podcast for women to take you from feeling like you're just surviving to thriving, to creating a life you really love. Expect to discover tips and tricks to get there. Each episode will have actionable steps to empower you to make changes. I started this podcast because I've been through it all, from getting out of a marriage with a narcissist to completely rebuilding my life. And now I'm on a mission to help you too. You can change your life. It's absolutely possible. Hello, my friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Life After From Surviving to Thriving. This week, we're going to talk about some unexpected lessons I've learned along my journey that has, of course, included several toxic and narcissistic relationships. And my hope, of course, is in sharing these lessons with you, you won't make the same mistakes that I did. Or more importantly, the thing I find more than anything else is hopefully that you're listening and learning from my experiences will shorten your time in these relationships. It'll help you understand more quickly the relationships that you might be facing, and of course, improve those healing times. If you're a first-time listener, I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here. All right, for those of you that have been around for a little bit, you know that I have had my fair share of relationships with toxic and narcissistic people. My ex, of course. I've had a couple of bosses and even some community members, people that I've worked with in the community or on projects. Like me, it is possible that you've had an experience with someone that's toxic or narcissistic, and maybe you didn't realize it at first. Of course, this podcast is all about providing examples and practical, easy to use tips and tricks for how to shift and change your mindset, change your life, and get out of those relationship patterns, right? Again, it's all about noticing it, acknowledging it, and getting away from it. And a lot of the time, we need to make these changes because when we really think about it, we're in relationships that aren't really working. And it isn't until later that we realize that they're actually toxic or narcissistic. The reality is it's really sometimes hard to tell when you're in it, when you're in the middle of it, right? That whole can't see the forest through the trees. So what we're going to focus on today is 3 lessons I've learned while discovering I'm in these kinds of relationships, navigating through them, and then healing from them and moving on. The first lesson is, of course, going to be around shifting our mindset. The second lesson is that we always have a choice. And you guys know I don't use the words always and never frequently. I feel like life is not black and white, but I am going to say it this time. We always have a choice. And the third lesson is about finding solutions. Once we realize that we have a choice, we really put ourselves in a place of being able to find solutions. Now, of course, I recognize that these lessons, even me talking about them, might feel a little Pollyanna-ish and naive. I get that. I hear you. Those of you out there that are skeptical, I hear you. And I'm also here to tell you that I can tell you with absolute certainty that they're not Pollyanna-ish or naive. All of these lessons I've learned in really unexpected ways, and mostly because my life has gone completely awry. The things that we're going to talk about, these 3 lessons, are ones that I've learned have come specifically from really challenging events in my life. Anybody else feel that? Anybody else have that? So, our first lesson is going to be all about our mindset. I have several, every couple months I do a mindset episode. And so I'm not going to focus too much on this piece of it in this episode. I want to remind you that our mindset has so much influence on the quality of our lives and the quality of our relationships. And as it relates to these lessons I've learned, at one of the absolute worst possible times in my life, I was faced with the opportunity to shift my mindset from pessimistic to optimistic. For a long, long time, when I was pessimistic, I really felt like I had fewer options, that I didn't have choices, that there weren't solutions. And what that created was a space where I felt like I didn't even know how to solve the problems in my life. And frankly, it took my ex-husband leaving to open me up to the world of possibilities. So I'm really going to briefly tell you how I shifted from pessimistic to optimistic. So as many of you already know, my ex came to me on April 1st, no less, and told me that we were going to get a divorce. And again, this is up until then, it was one of the most that I could acknowledge traumatic and significant and negative events in my life. And so you would think that I would really lean into that pessimism that I was so accustomed to at the time. And, I just want to add in there, for me, that pessimism really allowed me to play the victim a little bit too. Now, I definitely am a survivor of almost every form of abuse that you can experience. So I don't tell that lightly. And sometimes we have to be aware that we're using something to lean into the more negative side, and we got to correct that. So, about 6 weeks after he left, to this day, I have no idea where this came from or how it came to me. But I had a moment where I just thought to myself, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And, we don't often have light bulb moments in our lives. And let me tell you, I've had to practice not being pessimistic, choosing to be optimistic and to see that I have choices and to see that there are solutions to the adversity that comes my way. It was as close to a light bulb moment as I've had in my life. I just knew in my core that even though I was experiencing what was to be the beginning of an almost decade-long struggle, that eventually the kids and I would be okay. And what that has done for me, or I guess I have this really funny, kind of odd skill set. And as I tell this story, I realize I had it before. It just played out a little differently. I tend to look at life as if it's a puzzle. And I often create analogies around puzzles and pieces and putting things together. And so, what are the pieces of the puzzle? Where do they fit? I'm thinking often about, how do I arrange them? And I've really found that having this funny little skill, it's a really beautiful thing to look at life as a puzzle. And it really pulls our 3 lessons that we're going to talk about today together to move us towards completing our own puzzle. Because really what it is it's a strategy. As we shift our mindset, we're able to see that we have choices, And then we can move into those solutions. So think about, what does your puzzle look like? How many pieces does your puzzle have? And where do you want to maybe expand that puzzle to have a few more pieces? The next lesson that we're going to talk about that I learned is you always have a choice. And I've already said, using absolute words, always and never, I tend to shy away from that. And yet, in this case, I want to stick with it. You always have a choice. Those times that I experienced that deep adversity, deep adversity, where I felt like I had no options, I felt like I didn't have any choices at all. And because I felt that way and because of how difficult the situation was, in order to not just end up sitting on the couch and eating bonbons all day long and just completely denying what was happening in my life, I had to find a new way. I had to create new paths. And that's really where this idea of you always have a choice comes from. It isn't Pollyanna-ish. It's not, oh, everything's great. Oh, my life is wonderful. It's not that at all. It's about being in that situation where you look around and you say, shit, what the hell do I do now? And we start thinking about, what does it mean practically when I say we always have a choice? Well, what that means is that we have no control over what anybody else has done, what anybody else is going to do, or what they're currently doing. We have no control over the people in our lives. The only person that we have control over is ourselves. And as a side note, I think it's important to recognize I'm not talking about parenting here. That's parenting, that's a whole other episode. And while it is our job as parents, for those of you that are parents out there, it is our job to teach our kids that ultimately they will have control over their own lives and they don't have control over anyone else. And it is our responsibility as parents to help them build their own agency, to grow their agency and their competency and their capacity so that they can effectively have control over their own lives. Today, though, we're focusing on ourselves. So keep that in mind. Having a choice is about looking at your life even when you're thinking to yourself, I am completely stuck. I have no options. I have no choices. And we're back to, what the hell do I do now? Well, I'm here to tell you that you do, in fact, have choices. We do have choices. They might not be what we expect, and they might not even be what we want in that moment. And we still have choices. So I'm going to go back to this example with my ex coming to me and telling me that we're going to get a divorce. I absolutely could have looked at that situation and said, I don't have any choice here. He's told me what he wants, no matter what I want. And I'm stuck dealing with that. I could have looked at it that way. And I'm certain that I probably had moments where I did look at it that way. And at its most basic, this is one place where justifiably I could have said, oh, I don't have any choices. It's not on me. He's made this decision for both of us, and it's not up to me. Legitimately, that's a legitimate position to have. And I want you to think about how, if that's the road you take, how your life, the path that you're on. Because it's not the entire picture, right? In fact, I did have choices. I didn't want to be in that situation, but I did have choices, right? Obviously, I didn't have the choice around his decision to end the relationship. That was made unilaterally by him. However, I could have asked myself these types of questions to remind myself that I had choices, right? What do I want this divorce to look like? Right? The divorce is happening. That I don't have a choice on. But what do I want it to look like? I can always go back to what do I want? What do I want? What do I want right now? What do I want in the future? What do I want my life to look like? And of course, for anyone that's navigated through ending any kind of toxic or narcissistic relationship, whether it's a divorce or not, saying, how do I want this process to go? How do I want to move through this? So even when we think we're in that unilateral situation that we didn't choose, that we don't control, we have the ability to choose what happens next. And we figure that out by asking ourselves the questions, whether it's the questions I just posed or better questions for you in your situation. Here's the thing though, we got to be open to the answers. And if these questions feel too big, or you're going through this exercise and you're trying to practice this and the questions feel too big, what do I want? I don't know, right? What do I want my life to look like? That's too big. Then add some qualifiers. What do I want today? What do I want next? What do I want my life to look like right now? Right? If we add those qualifiers, we can chunk those questions down a little bit and it becomes less overwhelming. The thing is, we maintain our choices by getting clarity. And I cannot reiterate enough the choices that we make, or that we're, I was going to say confronted with, but confronted's kind of a harsh word. So the choices that are put in front of us, they absolutely may not necessarily be the choice that we originally intended to make or want to make. 100% I get that. I wasn't planning on getting a divorce then while my children were so young. And getting clarity around that can sometimes mean having possible options or plans, right? What's option A? What's option B? Option C? Option D? However many you need. That's how I really learned to lean into this concept that we always have a choice. Even when we can't control what's happening around us, we always have a choice for how we move through the situation. And for me personally, one of the ways that I've really successfully been able to do that over time is to have multiple plans, multiple pathways, so that I can learn how to be most successful and maneuver through whatever that challenge or diversity is that I'm facing in the moment. That's how I give myself more choice. What are the ways that you can give yourself more choice as you're moving through something that maybe is happening that you don't want or didn't anticipate? All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to discuss our last lesson, and then we're going to do a few tips. Woo woo, my favorite part. I'll see you in a minute. Be right back. Are you finding yourself struggling in a relationship and wondering if you're dealing with a narcissist? You're not alone, and I've got a resource that can help. Get my 5 questions to confirm you're not the problem. This helps you identify the emotions associated with being in a controlling relationship. Just head over to locatecoaching.com/free gift and take the first step toward clarity and confidence in your relationships. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So happy to have you back. So we're going to talk about our last lesson. And our last lesson is that there is always a solution. Again, using that language that I'm so often careful to use. We always can find a solution. Sometimes that means thinking outside the box. That might mean some growth or some development or some opening up on our part. It might take expanding in a way that, frankly, we aren't prepared for, we don't want to do. And sometimes, oh, the story of my life, sometimes it means not even thinking outside the box, but ending up in a whole new box in a completely different neighborhood. Sometimes that's what it means. And again, we're not Pollyanna-ish. We're not, oh, my life is so great and grand, and oh, there's no problems here, so it's fine. No, that's not what we're looking at. And yet, I can tell you, we can always find a solution. And often it's in those situations where we think that no solution exists that and where we actually find one are those periods in our lives where we are experiencing the most growth, the most expansion in our lives, and ultimately end up being the most grateful for. You hear that a lot in the self-help space. I don't know, is this still called the self-help space? uh, I can tell you that I'm one of those people. The worst, and I mean the absolute worst things that have happened in my life, I'm ultimately grateful for. I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have this beautiful, wonderful, wacky, zany life without having faced all that adversity. And it would be so hard to relate to living if I hadn't had the life experience that brought me to where I am today. So when you think there's no solution, I really invite you to consider, the light at the end of the tunnel may be down a really long tunnel, and yet there will be light. And what is the thing that you can do today, right now, in this moment, to move you even just one small step towards that light? That's what knowing in your core that where there's solutions. And I think a lot of that has to do, when I originally thought about this episode, I thought about adding a lesson around hope and grief and how they often are so intertwined. And I just decided the episode would be way too long if I added that as well. And really, it's probably more suited to be its own episode. So I'll think about doing that in the next few, in one of the next few episodes. The thing with hope is that it creates a space for us to maintain some control in our lives and to use goals and pathways and agency to find the solutions to reach those goals, to find the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you're in a place where you feel like there are no solutions, think about, lean into hope, lean into what you can do, lean into, what's worked in the past, what evidence do you have? And just remember that you wouldn't be the beautiful, amazing, incredible person you are today without finding solutions to the adversity you've already experienced in life. Hold on to that. It's my favorite chime now. It's tip time. And we know that's my favorite part of every episode is tips. So we have just a couple of tips for today. The first is, when you're shifting or changing your mindset, don't try to solve the next 5 years of your life. Right? When we are working on our mindset, small, consistent steps, building evidence, focusing on our values, tapping into who we are, all of these things are really key important points when we're talking about our mindset. And this tip is especially useful when part of what you're changing is the mindset around a toxic relationship or a narcissistic person. Okay? Because it takes time to process through that. So, what does that look like in practicality? Pardon me. It looks like solve for today. What do I need to do today? What can I do today? What can I do in this moment? What do I want today? How can I practice the mindset that I'm working on? What patterns am I working on? Do I need to look at? Can I practice shifting and changing? Another way to look at this is, what's the very next decision that actually needs to be made? Because when you're learning a new mindset, when you're shifting into a new mindset, asking yourself the question, what's my entire life going to look like now? It can feel overwhelming. It can make you feel like you don't have choices or solutions, right? We don't need to solve the whole puzzle. We're going to stick with that analogy. We don't need to solve the whole puzzle right now in this moment. All you need to do is find the next piece and where it fits. And then you can work on the next piece, right? Every puzzle that we do, whether it's an actual puzzle or our theoretical puzzle, every puzzle comes together one piece at a time. And we can't do that. We can't make our choices and find our solutions until our mindset is square and focused and in alignment with who we are now and where we want to be going. Right? The next tip is similar to that. The next tip is looking at it, instead of looking at it as I don't have any choice, I don't have any choices. Instead of looking at it that way, kind of split it out. And if the reality is you don't like your choices, then be honest about that. Acknowledge that. Because sometimes when we say, I have no choice, I have no choices, what we actually mean is none of the choices that are available to me right now are choices I really want. And those are really different things. Even when the things in our life aren't going as planned or how we want them to, we still have a choice about our response. So if you hear yourself saying, I don't have a choice, it's not my choice, I invite you to take a moment and ask yourself, do I really truly have no choice at all? Or am I just not liking the choices that are available to me? And if you can't choose what happened, if you don't like the choices that are available to you, what can you choose? What can you do? Where would you like to go? When you're asking those questions in that slightly different way, it's going to help you gain clarity. And it's gaining that clarity and having, even the acknowledgement of I don't like my choices. I don't like my choices. I had to face that a lot in my divorce. I don't like either of these choices. But getting some clarity on what the long game was and what my long-term strategy was and choosing from that place, what that does is it helps you get control back in your life. It helps you feel like you've got some agency and some will and some choice. So I invite you to consider that. I think I'm just going to do one more tip. And that is around the solutions. We always have a solution. The thing is, when something feels really overwhelming and we know that there's a solution out there, maybe we just haven't come across it yet, consider not forcing yourself into a place where there can only be one answer. I have to find the answer to this question. right? Because in most cases in our lives, we have the possibility to find more than one answer, more than one solution to whatever situation we're in, even if that situation is a challenge, an obstacle, adversity. So, what's option A? What's option A? What do I really want? What How would I have this go exactly as I wanted? What would I do if everything's going really well or reasonably well, right? That's option A. Great. I got option A out there. Okay, so option B. What am I going to do if option A doesn't work? Option B is maybe I might have to give on this or compromise on that, or my life would look different, but I can still see how I would move through this. And yeah, I'd really like option A to work, but having option B, that's a close second. I could do that. Or I could get there. And and then consider an option C. What is out there? What solution might come to me that I haven't really seriously considered yet? Where is that space? Where is that growth line? Where is that my ability to expand and really think, God, I never thought I'd find myself in this place and I really don't want to be here, but maybe that's opening up. This door is closing, so this window is opening, right? That's option C. And then if you still feel like, these options aren't likely, the solutions don't work for me, what the hell am I doing? Then maybe there's option D. What do I do if I am so far out of my realm that I can't even fathom in this moment where I might go, what I might do, how this might get resolved? This is the example of not only do I have to think out of the box, but I'm in a whole new box and it got shipped to a new neighborhood. So I invite you to consider that we have these different options. And I mean, there have been times in my life I've had options QRST, right? What I really want you to maybe not do, though, is to stay up all night long or wake up at 3 a.m. and ruminate about what these options are. Yeah, we want to be reflective. Yeah, we want to think about it. Yeah, we want to feel like we're prepared because that helps us feel like we're in control. We want choice. So, in having choice means having solutions. This is not an exercise to ruminate over, though. This is not an exercise to beat yourself up over. This idea of having better pathways, a bigger puzzle, more options is designed to help us improve and move through the situation, the challenge, the obstacle that we're facing, not to beat ourselves up over it, right? And that's some of that's that mindset shift where we're moving into a more optimistic mindset. We do have choices, we can find solutions, the light is there. So please, 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 as with any of my episodes, but this one in particular, please don't hear the lessons that I've learned and think this is a great way to beat myself up and make my life more difficult. If you're in one of these situations and you're maneuvering through, you're navigating particularly a toxic or narcissistic relationship, always, always, always give yourself grace and space to practice, to move through, to learn, to grow, to develop, because that's what it takes. And the thing is, you don't necessarily have to have better circumstances than you did previous to this situation or than you did yesterday. Going through this process, not just having additional options, although specifically creating more options What it does is it gives you more puzzle pieces. All of a sudden, you have more puzzle pieces available. Your puzzle goes from being a 10-piece puzzle to being a 100-piece puzzle. And then once you master having a 100-piece puzzle, then you grow to a 1,000-piece puzzle. And when you're in that place, when we think about that puzzle analogy, the more pieces you have, the bigger the puzzle that you can create in your life, and the more options available to you, the easier life actually becomes. Because no matter which way you look, you know you've got choice. Oh, this piece didn't work today. I'm going to go to the piece on the other corner. I'm going to pick a different color today. Oh, I can do the red pieces today, or the green pieces today, or the blue pieces today. It expands your life. And when we can go through these processes that I've described, the lessons I've learned today, the next adversity gets just a little bit easier to deal with. And we go into it with a better mindset. So when all of that comes together, all of the lessons learned come together, you have choices. You have choices about your solutions, which is going to continue to move you through your mindset shifts. And that shift is to, what if the thing that feels like it has taken away all of my choice is actually asking you to discover the choices you haven't been able to see yet? Man, what a beautiful process. I didn't learn these 3 lessons because my life went according to plan. I learned them specifically because it didn't. I learned that I had choices when I thought I had none. I learned that changing the way I think changes what I'm able to see and process. And I learned that even when I can't fix what's happened, I can find another way forward. Think about that. And if this episode really hit home for you, I invite you and ask you to please send it to someone that you care about, that you think might benefit from it as well. If you're not already following the podcast, please make sure you do so you don't miss what's coming next. Always have great episodes on the horizon. And remember, you've got this. One thought, one choice, one action at a time. As we wrap up, here's the thing. I've made every mistake. I've literally been there and done that. It's one step at a time, and you'll get there. There's hope. You've got this. If you're struggling in a relationship and wondering if it might be controlling, you're not alone. Download my free PDF at locatecoaching.com/free gift to help you find clarity and confidence. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon.